So anyway, Mike, why don't you start us off by? Oh, wait, here comes Bob.
Bob, if you
Okay,
could.
Bob, I don't think you've introduced yourself. Will you tell us just a little bit about your background?
Certainly. Uh, am retired now. I was a physician in sort of academic medicine for 40 plus. And I in, enjoyed a lot of these courses at the the Chesapeake Forum from that. And I signed up for this one basically because I thought it was going to be some interesting thought experiments to talk about.
Okay. All right. Okay, Mike, why don't you kind of bring us
Well,
along here?
we were, it's a three-session class. This is the last of the three sessions. The first one, this is sort of in my class notes. I'm just summarizing what is in my class notes. But basically, the first class, we kind of focused on Descartes' skepticism, where he got down to, I think, therefore I am is the only thing he knew for certain. And we talked quite a bit about that. And then the second class, we tried to talk about the existence of the touchable, sensible external world, the hard things like the chairs we're sitting in, the things we can see, the things we can touch, which have been controversial probably since Plato, and trying to talk about it in the sense of not looking for certainty. This is the certainty issue, by the way, that Descartes mentioned is also goes through all of philosophy and looking for certain knowledge. And it's amazing if you just give that up, you throw it out the window and you say, no, we don't have 100% certainty, but so what? So, Forrest and I was joking with maybe Richard was on earlier saying we're kind of proposing you don't take philosophers too seriously in terms of radical skepticism. Skepticism is an intellectual, very positive thing, but don't let it drive you down to what was known the philosophy of solipsism, where solipsism is I am the only person that exists in the universe and everybody else is a illusion. That doesn't really work for people. It's not a really livable concept. And then today we're going to talk about more general views of reality because we use that word for many, many things, including how we view other people in terms of what we think their reality is. And on that note, um, Forrest, I'll turn that back over to you
Okay.
um, to
Okay.
talk about.
Well, I'd like us to. Mike has given us so many questions, so that we just can't deal with all of them. We hope that maybe you carry away uh, some of these questions to do some further thinking about them. But we can't deal with we can only deal with some of them and only some very few. One question that still interests me that we did get into a little bit is the odd nature that we have of thinking of ourselves as being somehow a continuous person. I have lived for many decades, and I think I'm still Forrest, but I've lost my hair, most of it, and we all have wrinkles, and our molecules have changed, and so on. So we've changed sometimes in quite radical ways. but we claim that we're still the self. So maybe you want to get back to that. But what I'd like to get to is Mike's first question that he had in the second page today. We make very broad judgments about others based on what we think of their sense of reality. Here are examples. Jane's grounded in reality. Jack lives in his own little world. So on. Grow up and face reality. And there's a lot of talk these days about this kind of reality that we attribute to others, or a kind of unreality, we think, based on our own sense of reality. What do you make of that, and how do you arrive at those thoughts? Yeah, Tony?
Forrest, there's a word that we hear quite frequently now in the media, and they say that they're not serious people. I can't help but wonder if that doesn't get back to the sense of what is common sense and how that relates to your ego and solipsism, and if someone is capable of recognizing what is real when they're referring to someone all the time as they're not serious people. Does anyone have thoughts about that?
I think it's just opinion. I think it's people stating their opinion, what they think, and the vibes they get from others. That's can be my reality sometimes too. That if I think someone is selfish or dishonest, somewhere I got that opinion from something that person may have done, said, that, it's an observation.
I think it's sort of a soft way of canceling someone to say that they're not serious. You're saying they shouldn't be taken seriously and they're not, significant.
But is it ever true that someone's sense of reality is so askew, so at odds with not just your sense, but a more general sense, a more objective sense of reality, almost a quantitative measure that they are not serious, that they are, they're not plugged in to the reality that is generally accepted.
Right.
I'm not saying that all reality is generally accepted. We, certainly as a political scientist, I know that there are very few things that are generally accepted anymore. But someone who refuses to acknowledge that what he's sitting on is a chair,
Not a serious person.
Pardon me?
A person who cannot acknowledge the chair is not a serious person.
Well, I don't think we need to take that person's denial of the reality of the chair very seriously. We might want to explore, what it is that that causes them to deny its existence.
And does this relate to what is common sense?
Yeah, I think it does.
And common sense is based on testimony.
Well, testimony, convention,
Mm-hmm.
agreed upon conventions. I don't know.
And so everyone has a different view of what common sense is.
No, I don't think everyone does have a different view of it. I think there are some common views of common sense that we can that many people, not everyone, can agree upon, and the ones who don't agree are outliers, and maybe the the agreeers would regard them as not serious, not serious people. I mean, it's difficult to talk to someone who will not accept what is what in your understanding of the world is agreed upon reality.
I think also you're getting into the territory of values. Common sense is a value, and fairness is a value, and justice is a value. And these are things that I think people intuitively agree on.
Well, for example, common sense can be based on understanding of testimony. For example, if you if a friend of yours wants to go into a lion cage and convinces you that these lions are all safe to play with, but you respond, "Get real," and what you're basing your opinion on is that this person is not accepting the dangers of what they're doing, and so you're saying, get real, have some common sense or some understanding of what common sense is.
Mhm. Well, common sense is, I think, think of that literally. Common, meaning general, agreed upon, and sense, meaning
Logical.
logic or
Understand.
knowledge.
Knowledge.
I mean, it's a kind of knowledge.
It
notion
to
that
me as I listen, we never define what we believe is real. And then we bring in new terms like common sense. And, it seems like you want to know what is real or what you believe is real. And those beliefs you try to bring into your thing. And sometimes you try to pass those beliefs over to others. But the key is what is you have beliefs and you have things, but how are you going to react? So, in other words, if it's just Forrest sitting drinking coffee and deciding that the coffee cup is real or not, to me, that's a game. Deciding whether to go and jump in front of a speeding bus other than to try to commit suicide is, not real. And I think, we should focus on that kind of, what reality is, which I thought was the title of this course.
It is.
I think that, with 2020 hindsight, the title, What is Reality, is really more than a 3-session class because it seems that we kind of run out of, we don't resolve something but I would argue in some sense it's unresolvable. Skepticism, and in terms of our empiricism, in terms of our touch and those senses, there are theoretical issues with skepticism and empiricism, and you can talk them down to a rabbit hole but it still fundamentally gets to the point of how do you live? And you live when you sit down in a chair and you expect the chair to hold you up as opposed to landing on the floor. So you kind of accept that. Again, if you give up certainty, that is a reality that most people accept. And I'd venture to guess that the outliers are people who we eventually classify as having mental problems, schizophrenics, people who delusional, people who are on psychedelic drugs and see things that don't exist. We make those distinctions because, in general, we know the real world exists. Is that helpful?
Well, I agree. There's one other element that I think is crucial. It's at the time when you are forced to make a decision about doing something. And so, in other words, if you take somebody like Fauci and say, okay, on this day and this time, this is all the information I have. I'm now going to have to make a decision to go ahead and tell people to wear masks and tell people to get vaccines. Okay. And then you look back if you go back 10 months from now or past that or go to now, what you see is that the facts that he had at the time weren't the correct facts, that he had to make a decision at that time. And I think that's an important thing when you think about reality, is that, it's at the time is a factor. It's at when you have to make that decision at that time is what you're thinking about is real. And so reality can change over time.
Your son,
He used common sense at the time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Bob, yeah, I think you mean not that reality has changed, but your sense of reality has changed. Is that fair?
No, I would say the knowledge has changed.
Oh, okay.
That's what I think is the key difference.
Yeah.
So, it's sometimes very easy to criticize people and say they're not real, 10 months after the facts have changed.
Mhm.
And you see this, from my background all the time, what you diagnose a person at one point in time, the facts can change. The medical opinions about what to do in that situation can change. And so, if you look back retrospectively, that wasn't, it's still that you made a real decision at that time, but, the facts have changed.
When I was an undergraduate, I read this really challenging book by Thomas Kuhn, who at the time was a historian and also a philosopher at Princeton, about scientific revolutions and about the belief systems that pervaded within scientific communities at any given point in time. And he pointed out that these paradigms, as he called them, did indeed change. And the general opinion, the common shared knowledge, the common scientific sense, as it were, was indeed transformative and had an underlying dynamic that had less to do with empiricism and with validating or invalidating scientific hypotheses based on experiments, and had more to do with the discussion and the dialogue within communities regarding potential hypothetical realities. And I think the same phenomenon now has come to apply in the political arena, where we have people who live in belief systems that are incompatible one with another, and which indeed are starkly in opposition. We've always had such belief systems that applied to religion, applied to ethics, whatever. But I think that it is the case that people create realities within social systems. They reinforce them and become believers based on membership, acclamation, testimony, and tradition. And this is, I think, an aspect of reality that Tony was getting at. And it was studied and thoroughly documented in a very convincing way by Thomas Kuhn. I suspect he's no longer alive. I don't know, but he was a a brilliant, he provided brilliant testimony to the way in which realities were created and then abandoned and then reinvented and reformed and either grew or didn't. Anyway, I'm blithering too much.
The the difficulty, I think, when it comes to political reality is that most of it is not testable in the same way that physical reality uh, may be. You know, there are certain things that we know because because physics has scientific discourse has reached certain conclusions. The law of gravity, things like that, simple things that we take for granted. But then, as Robert was pointing out, there are in the medical world things that we don't know, and things that we haven't dealt with before, things for which there is no received wisdom or conventional wisdom. And then we go on to the but within that world, given the scientific method, there are ways to test, there are ways to reach conclusions, always tentatively, but still conclusions that we can, at least for the moment, feel fairly confident about acting upon until more data may change our opinion. Very little of that applies to political reality, which is so subjective that it's hardly testable. I mean, the North and the South entertained two completely different senses of political reality in 1860. We may think we live in a divided time today, and we do, but it's not the first time that there have been competing versions of political reality out there at odds with one another, and creating some havoc.
I would argue that there are indeed means and modes to test political realities. I mean, we're going through that at the moment, and they're contentious, and they involve violence, some of them. Some of them involve adjudication through institutions like the Supreme Court or the Congress. Some of them are resolvable through a democracy that's open and contestable and not anyway. Some of it's resolvable through the media. I mean, that's what the media does.
Sure.
It resolves conflicts. It points out what's true and what's not, or at least it tries to.
No, it doesn't.
We have a different set of institutions, but we certainly have a number, whether they work or not, and indeed whether the institutions that confirm scientific validity are workable in this mode. And there are a huge number of working hypotheses now about the origin of the cosmos, the origin of the universe, and they're contestable one with another, and none of them is easily subject to empirical verification. There's not a single experiment that will confirm whether we have a flat universe or whether we have one that's different in shape and continuously expanding. The same thing with quantum theories of gravity. I mean, I don't think there are such fundamental differences between the sciences and political economy as you suggest.
All right. Well, we do have a basic disagreement there because I don't I don't think that resolution, institutional resolution of a disagreement by the Supreme Court or some other authority is the same thing as the establishment of a scientific truth, if you will. It's not, you know, 5 members of the Supreme Court think one way, 4 think the other, 5 win. That may that may resolve the issue for the time being, but that doesn't make the losers any less accepting, any more accepting of the outcome. It's simply a temporary resolution, and you move on to the next thing. I don't see that in the same sense that I see. I agree with.
If 4 Nobel Prize winners in physics endorse a certain theory of the cosmos, and 3 others endorse a different theory, how is that different in terms of adjudication and the application of institutionalized knowledge to find truth and to identify reality?
But
I don't think it's different at all.
it
The
seems,
subject matter is different.
Yeah, how about letting somebody else speak there?
yeah. So it seems to me there's a big difference between, experiencing a physical reality and the more abstract reality like justice or common sense. In fact, I'm not sure. I mean, can there even be a reality with something like justice? Because I don't know that we can agree exactly on what justice is. Clearly, different people have different views in different circumstances as to what justice is, and also like with common sense. I mean, if it's physical reality and we're talking about a chair, we can all probably agree that it's a chair because we can go over there and feel it and so forth. But if we're talking about justice, I mean, what was the reality in the Civil War? I mean, I think most of us have a view of what we thought the reality was, but the South had a totally different view. And so, I mean, what is reality if we have 2 totally different concepts of what reality is? I
Maybe
mean,
we
it's
never,
reality to us, but it's not reality to everybody.
right. Maybe we never get to the point where we all agree that we're seeing the same thing. And what interests me is like, what point do people agree that everybody agrees that, justice is, equality for everyone? What moves the needle? How does a population go from seeing things in one way to seeing them in a different way?
Well, I think in every discipline, in every aspect of human experience, there are people, most of them are called philosophers, some of them political scientists, some of them Nobel Prize winners in physics, who explore open spaces, who hypothesize, who project intellectual constructs that are logical and consistent, and that make sense out of what's generally confusing and difficult to understand for most people. And these thought leaders, these intellectuals, lead the way. I mean, they put forward their thinking. They work outside the box, as it were. Terrible expression, I hate it. Anyway, I apologize for using it here. But there is a process of human learning that has become institutionalized and demonstrably successful in a whole different realm of human experience that drives us forward, and it's a matter of projecting certain hypothetical truths, and then the rest of the population validating them or catching up through the voting box, through applications of knowledge through general acceptance and appreciation through the media, et cetera, et cetera. And it's that informing process, that knowledge through testimony that creates the reality that everyday people live in. It's the
Let me,
confirmation that we can sit on a chair and not fall down.
Can I make a point? I think everyday reality is more belief than it is empirical science. You can tell a lot of people how gravity is a certainty, and you'll still get pockets of people that'll say, I don't know, maybe it is here, but you don't know what. In Iowa, I don't think it's true. It's opinion. It's belief. It's not fact. It's not scientifically explored and challenged information. It's belief. Much like religions are beliefs for different things, I think
Beliefs that people act on, beliefs that that people use to conduct their everyday affairs. I mean, what's more real than that?
those beliefs are swayed by people who put out various quote unquote truths and try to convince people that certain things are real and not. It has very little to do with actually experimenting and coming up with and doing empirical studies and looking at statistics, et cetera, et cetera. I think very few people do that.
Do you think we?
What about differences about theological beliefs? Do they fit into any of these classifications?
In my opinion, it isn't. In my opinion, it isn't all that different than political beliefs. It's a belief. We have very little evidence, really to hang on to prove any of these theological theories, right? Or suppositions. We don't really have any proof. We have beliefs, strong beliefs that have been built and developed over.
Beliefs that lead to faith. And then you have to define faith.
Faith is very much belief.
Well, do you think that at the end of the day, we choose beliefs that work for us, that make sense in our worlds?
Yeah. As you define your world, and it's influenced by people around you that are telling you what's true and what's not true.
And
How you
we change our
interpret the world.
beliefs. We change our beliefs when the beliefs that we have held no longer seem to work.
Or
Either there's somebody's got a louder voice and makes a better, sways you in another direction.
and belief systems fail.
Half people
all the time.
had one belief and half of the people in the country had another belief, more or less. Maybe not in every single, issue. But, we have two different, the country separated almost 50-50 in terms of their general belief about things politically.
Mike, can you help us along?
I would, yeah, I'm looking for points of agreement here. And I'm really going to go way back. We had a social movement in the 1700s, the Enlightenment, and that was partially certainly defined by Jettison kicking out a worldview that was not sustainable or not successful, and out of the Francis Bacon and many other scientists, scholars kind of developed this idea of the scientific methodology. And I think that becomes a tool for us to decide what is real. And as does logic. And within those, I think I mentioned this in, I don't know, the notes from last week or this week, that there's certain key elements of that. And certainly one of them is consistency. If your belief system is inconsistent, first of all, it's unlikely it's going to be successful, but it's very hard to discuss with anyone something, if they don't believe in consistency. If they're willing to say, yeah, the earth is flat, and you start arguing with them, you say, oh, I don't really mean that. The earth is round. You have to have a consistent set of beliefs that are successful. We now demand that evidence be public, that, repeatability of scientific experiments. It's not enough for two guys at the University of Utah to claim they invented cold fusion when no one in the world can duplicate that result. So we're looking for public access to the information. And then we're looking for rules that we have of evidence. And certainly testimony is part of those rules. I mean, we have to rely on testimony because the vast majority of what all of us know while we're sitting in this room, our rooms, is testimony. You can take that set of tools, consistency, evidence that is real, repeatability, and I think you can apply them to some of these social issues. So the same process that leads me to believe the chair is real, I can apply to justice, and I can apply to the state of Maryland. But now that doesn't mean everything's certain. As Ron said, you hit a certain point that between the testimony and the repeatability of evidence and consistency that don't provide you the answer today. We don't know today what the Big Bang was. There's a lot of dispute about it. There's a lot of dispute about what our cosmos is. There's a lot of dispute about quantum mechanics. So you can accept skepticism, but still have beliefs, true, what I would call justified true beliefs. They're justified in the sense that you've examined them, you accept the fact of testimony that may conflict with yours, and that your beliefs are consistent. And you can apply that same set of tools not only to yourself but the real world, and you can apply them to these institutions. This is
How do you go about testing the hypothesis that white males are smarter and more deserving of a nation's limited resources than black-skinned females?
Well, for one thing, there was a book written about that writes, it's called The Bell Curve, where two sociologists tried to make the point that Caucasian people are brighter than brown people. Interestingly enough, the conclusion was Asians are brighter than us white folks. And it turned out that through analysis, it was a statistical flaws throughout that whole book. So I would say, how do you test it? Well, you have to define intelligence. I think most people today accept that an IQ number is not the definition of intelligence. You have emotional intelligence. You have lots of different kinds of intelligence.
I wasn't talking about intelligence. I was talking about net worth.
Well,
I was
net
talking
worth,
about generational wealth. I was talking about net income after taxes. I mean, why do
certainly, Ron,
well-connected white men deserve more of those benefits than black women?
well, the rub is the word deserve.
Yes.
And I would say
We
that
have a system that deserves them more.
going
So
back,
I'm sorry.
but going back to this notion of justice, I think all of us, at least the key of justice is fairness.
Mhm.
Fairness. I mean, if you feel that you're being treated unfairly, you feel like that justice is not working for you. So
But
fairness, I would say, when you're looking at these groups, demographic groups, you have to focus on fairness. Is it fair to say that someone who has acquired wealth is better? Now there's a belief system that says yes. It's called what is the word for it? Well, the Puritans believed it. The Puritans believed that if you were wealthy, that meant God favored you. But we've rejected that. I mean, that's not a good, successful way to run a community. It's failed.
But
Am I helping here?
don't you think that value of fairness, we feel it before we logically back it up?
Oh, absolutely.
It's we intuit when something's not, or we feel it in our hearts, or it's a feeling more than a thought.
But we can disagree on what is fair, okay, in a particular circumstance, and I don't think there's any objective way to determine what is really fairness. Fairness is a concept. It's like a belief, and it's I think it's real. Fairness can be real for somebody, and somebody else can have fairness as a reality, and it can be completely different. I don't think there's an absolute fairness, or that we can agree on fairness.
It's an interesting thing because I think we know when we're being treated unfairly. We know when others are being treated unfairly. And then we write a story about it. We make it like a logical, rational.
Yeah, but some people, feel that they're being treated unfairly, and other people would disagree that they're not being fielded.
But isn't the appeal to something like, well, all persons are created equal? Now, that's not a fact. It's a kind of aspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But we can, for example, a rich person may say, "Well, I pay so much more tax than other people, and that's just not fair." And somebody else can say, "Well, it's fair to have a progressive tax system." What is the reality in that situation?
Yeah, good question.
Well, then it goes to the value of common good. Some people believe in the common good and some people don't.
Yeah, but the common good what is the common good? We can sit here and debate all day about what the common good is.
But I would say the fact that we can debate something, or that some people may agree or disagree, doesn't make the issue not real. In other words, there is in game theory something, and it's philosophy as well, something called the tragedy of the commons, which 25 words or less, I'll use on the Chesapeake Bay, the crabbers on the Chesapeake Bay. They would say the tragedy of the commons is every crabber should go out and be able to pick as many crabs as they want. And if I had a dock, I don't, I could put a crab trap in the dock and say, well, I only pull 1 or 2 crabs out of the Chesapeake Bay a day. That doesn't ruin crabbing for the Chesapeake Bay. But if every single one of us did that, the Chesapeake Bay would have no crabs. So that's the tragedy of the commons. You have to accept that there is a common interest in certain things. And generally, the tragedy is called a tragedy of the commons because it means that if every one of us only decides to do it as in our own best interest with the resources, we won't have any resources for anybody. It can become a common belief. It can become a common cultural belief of what holds us together, which is not to say we can't argue about it. But I think there are these common beliefs and there are these cultural realities that we've been debating. I think was it Martin Luther King said, the arc of justice is long, but it curves towards the good. We all kind of know what that means. We know that what was justice in the Civil War is not considered justice today.
Right.
And we're hoping it's curving toward the good.
And some people would say, thanks to the outcome of last year's election, it is now curving toward the good. I mean, that just raises the question of how do you define the good? A lot of people, we're very happy with that idea 8-10 years ago, thinking that things were going to continue to proceed in the same direction. Well, they didn't, and another set of people are very happy that it didn't. It didn't go that way.
To come
So
to
I
come
think that-
full circle back to this notion of reality, that was both of those conversations I think were significant and suggested that reality is determined by circumstances, by
The eyes of the beholder.
by
That's
the
right.
context in which the cultural and historic context in which we operate. So a reality that existed during the Civil War, a set of beliefs, a set of values, a set of historic direction, a set of what history's trajectory itself was at that point is quite different today. And it'll probably be quite different in 10 years. It's certainly different in China than it is in the United States in terms of, what is the common good? What is the appropriate role of government? What is the domain and area of exercise and influence of individuals versus the state? I mean, there are a whole set of issues that are significant enough in their interpretation and application to define reality, that define the context in which we operate and in which we share values and perspectives and expectations. In other words, in which we share our reality. And they're different over time, across borders, even between different disciplines, as we've been discussing earlier.
It seems to me that there's a difference between a very important difference between what is my personal reality and what is society's reality, and that we all have our own reality, and only.
But you're influenced by other things, right?
Oh, absolutely.
all by
I mean, it's
yourself.
all how we process our whole life experience and
Right.
what we're seeing and hearing and so forth and so on. And that's what, and that reality can be different for different people. But there is a point at which enough people have the same reality that they can agree that something is real. Like, again, to go back to chair, okay, we can all see the chair and all agree that there's a chair here in this room and it's this color or whatever. But, we probably can't agree on what's a fair tax system. We all have our own views, which is a reality for us, but we can't all agree on what that reality is.
Bob,
Well, and also,
Bob, you wanted to come in here.
I was going to come back to this beliefs. I don't know that I would fully agree that beliefs are real. And the thing is that there were one factor that goes in. And if I were to sit here and listen to this conversation, I thought about exactly how long did, at one period in time, the overwhelming belief was that the world was flat.
Mhm.
Okay. And did that matter too much? No. It turned one person looking out and seeing the masts of a ship go down slowly, that was realized that it could be round, and started a whole exploration of this world. So that is so the belief was, people accepted that belief, but it wasn't real. The earth was never flat. and it didn't change to become round at some point. It's just that people believe that. And that's what a lot of, when you talk about politics, to me is a lot about charismatic people trying to instill a belief that may or may not be consistent with, quote, reality.
I also tend to believe that this,
Let me just interject. I don't think actually, I know that this belief has been around for a long time, that there were people who believed the earth was flat, but not many people really believed that. Not many people thought. I mean, the Greeks could see eclipses, and they could see the shadow of the earth against the moon. And for them, it was very clear that, and they could see ships disappearing over the horizon little by little. And so the belief that the earth is round has been really mostly the major belief of anybody who thought about things. But then there are others that are quite different. The Greeks, it's hard for us to imagine this, but way back in the time of Plato and Aristotle and other thinkers, they thought that we thought with our heart. They didn't really know about the brain. It was quite a long time before somebody opened up a skull and found a brain, but the feeling was that they thought down here. And it's very hard to think our way back into that, because we know, scientifically, we know that the brain is up here and that's an important major element in our thinking. But ancient times, they weren't there yet. Very peculiar.
But I bet you if you took a vote at that time and did a poll, that the vast majority of people would say, we don't care about that question. We got to go out and farm that field. And I think that's the reality. They didn't think about it. And, that was one of the thoughts that I had about, like, when you do that thought experiment about the boat and coming apart and then rebuilding it with the other parts. To me, do I really care about that? That's could be like sitting around and talking about the Ravens game the next day, from that. It's just a thought kind of experiment from that. But to the person that cares, right, is obviously the capitalist who wants to sell one of those things for an extraordinary amount of money. So it matters to them very much, which is the original.
I had an interesting experience when I was working for the World Bank. I worked on a number of privatization programs, including one in Yemen. And Yemen is the only pre-Socratic society and culture I've ever experienced. So by 10 o'clock in the morning, everybody in Yemen is stoned. They chew this psychoactive herb called cod. It's the biggest selling and most significant agricultural product in the country. There are cod markets everywhere. People choose this and they become delusional. They see through their heart, as Forrest said. They envision themselves as fantastic Lotharios, poets, singers, composers, people who have some money. Everybody in government has a room in their house, a cod room, where people come in the afternoon after they've had cod at home to chew cod and to discuss, what shall I say, light philosophical issues and aesthetic issues, and brag about their aesthetic competencies. It's a magical world. Their reality is very different from the one on Wall Street. Very different from the one in Beijing, but it is their reality. And what composes it, of course, what triggers it, is this psychoactive ingredient and a long culture and a tradition, a social domain and sanction that justifies the recreation or the creation of a reality that thousands of generations probably of Yemenis have lived in. I mean, they have their own mythologies. They have stories that they tell from one place. And this is interesting because Yemen has a much older culture and a much longer tradition than Saudi Arabia, its rich neighbor.
I'm wondering if they're growing that stuff in Washington.
Well, they may well be. I mean, cod is the use of it or the sale of it in Saudi Arabia is a capital offense. The Saudis know the threat that this kind of reality immersion or migration across the border can have. And they are concerned about it sufficiently to make it a capital offense. They actually chop people's heads off in Chop Square anyway, blah, blah, blah. I won't go into that. But, so we're talking about realities, where they come from, how they're constituted, how they're maintained, what the reality is. It seems to me that we can take some lessons from this pre-Socratic culture.
Don't you think
One
that
of the things
Really bizarre. It's
One of the
totally
things
bizarre.
Well, you may. I've seen. I worked in a whole bunch of bizarre places. I mean, Nepal is bizarre. A lot of places. This country's become increasingly bizarre.
and you think
Can't
that,
argue. I have a good friend. He's Hungarian. He's staying with me at the moment. He was the minister of privatization a long time ago in Hungary, and he came to work at the World Bank. He's Orban's nemesis. He ran it for president once, and he was almost killed. So he's telling me stories. He's relating a reality. I ask him, how do things in Hungary compare with things in the United States in terms of the diminution of individual rights and a whole bunch of other trespasses that we're constitutionally entitled to? He said, you have seen nothing yet. It gets much, much worse.
Well, that's
So, I mean, he's relating a political reality that, I have this on testimony, but from an authentic source. I mean, person who's not just studied this, but who lives it, who lives there, who understands it day to day. Is that reality? I think so.
it's yes, and obviously the word reality applies, but we also make judgments of would you want to live in Yemen, or would you want to live in Saudi Arabia? And when we're making those judgments, I think we're still going back to these tools of evidence, consistency, health, whatever it means to say happy. The happiest people in the world are in Scandinavia, not in Yemen, not in Saudi Arabia. And why do we find that appealing? We have to think about it. And although we'll find that we have disagreements about it, there's some general sense of what it means to live in a happy society like they have in Scandinavia. In fact, I live in Easton Village, and there's a woman who's part of our political club, and she's moving to Sweden. She's
For
getting
political reasons, or for her health?
Yeah, but
Family.
right, family. But her children love living in Sweden. There is a difference between living in Sweden and living in the United States, and we make those judgments. I mean, if we go back to history, we've never seen, very few of us have seen bacteria, and very few of us have seen a virus. But when you go back through Pasteur and the scientists that discovered it, it becomes something we accept because we know if we believe in it, we'll live longer. We're making judgments that the vast majority of people make, and we're making those for good reasons. Otherwise, we'd be dead. I mean, the caveman lived 30 years old and be dead. But we're adopting the scientific method, and these things we can't even see is real. So the fact that we can debate it doesn't mean it's not real. Am I? That's my rather mundane.
Actually, I think we're on the same side here. I agree with everything you've said.
Mhm.
I hope you
Yeah, I
agree
mean,
with some of what I said.
Yeah, I
I mean,
know, Ron. I appreciate you raising good points.
that's
I-
what I was saying is everybody has their own reality, and sometimes enough of us have the same reality that we can agree that something's real or close to being real or to a certain degree, and other times our realities are so different that we can't agree. You know.
I think there's always going to be disagreement. That's part of the human.
Yeah. And we've developed institutions to like the courts and so forth to resolve these situations of when there's different reality.
Well, democracy itself assumes
Right.
different working realities, doesn't it?
Yeah, but there's a system to resolve those issues. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, right. Of course, there has to be. Otherwise, you have chaos. You don't have a community. You don't have a functioning society. But you don't necessarily eliminate. You don't eliminate disagreement. You simply find a way of temporarily resolving disagreements and moving on.
Right. And I don't think that creates a reality. I mean, if Congress passed a law, it's not necessarily the reality. It's what we've agreed is how we're going to how we're going to resolve these disagreements.
Well, yeah.
Even take a court case. I mean, you go through the evidence. It's a criminal case. The person is convicted. Different realities. The jury decides what they think is real, and then later they come out with DNA evidence that shows that the jury was wrong. But it was a reality for the jury when they convicted them.
That's a very nice example, Oren, of how we have a kind of system that might well make mistakes, as you now just suggested, but we have a system for trying to resolve differences.
It's breaking down.
Yeah, it might not hold up very well during certain times, as with the Civil War.
Mhm.
Not only that, but
we have courts that make choices and decisions,
Mm-hmm.
and then whoever happens to be in charge of the mechanics of government just unwinds them.
Mm-hmm.
So there can be there's less and less trust in these parts of our system that try to resolve these problems.
Mm-hmm.
But not only are we challenged in terms of the institutional competency of the institutions that we rely on to sort out what's real and what's not, what's true, what's not, what's good and what's bad. But also we've created technologies which affect our individual perceptions of these very same things. We have invented a mass media capability through the internet and through television, which influences how we know ourselves, how we know each other, how we relate to a whole bunch of issues and topics that collectively define our reality. And now we're challenged by AI, by artificial intelligence. We're challenged by a technology which actually takes the raw material of of our mass media and transforms it into images and into visions and into the projection of realities that are disconnected from the ones that were used as feedstock into this process. I mean, we're on several ends, our ability to determine what's real and what's valid are being challenged at the judicial and adjudication level in terms of not just outcomes from courts, but also, I would argue, scientific reality, and also our individual perceptions. I mean, the backup position that some people are advocating is also threatened because those realities are being manipulated and are being recast with another set of technologies.
Well,
I'm reminded of the time that I don't know if most of you remember Walter Cronkite, but in those days, with
Yes.
Walter Cronkite and others on the major networks, seeming to voice a much more common reality for their audience than we have today. It's almost as if you think back to Walter Cronkite and you think, gee, that was America. That was kind of the sense that we all had. Whether or not that was true is another issue. But it was kind of presented that way, and we don't have any kind of authority, meaning fact authority figure like that today.
No, because people go to the media not for information, but for reinforcement,
affirmation.
And it-
affirmation,
it's-
affirmation,
There is
not information.
Yeah, well, in brain
Always
science,
true. Think about if you want to learn how to change the plumbing on your toilet or something and how to change certain things. So sometimes you go to the
All right, you go to Google for that, but
YouTube, yeah.
YouTube, yeah.
say everything.
Yeah,
But you don't go to YouTube to tell you how to vote. I mean, YouTube will tell you how to vote, of course, but there won't be any consensus.
yeah, but when people go to the different media, they're going there to get affirmation, but it's an affirmation of what their reality is.
Well,
a
that's
lot
right.
of this
They know what they think. They know what they think.
Right. And they want somebody to tell them they're right, you know.
Because they've been to that media before.
Yeah,
Medium
but
before.
a lot of that is just a constant feed of information that is biased in a sense that it's trying to convince you of something.
Sure, that's what
You're watching TikTok 24/7, you're going to have a point of view about reality. It may
Sure.
be close or not close to reality.
Well,
There's no
Yes,
there's no one trusted person like Walter Cronkite anymore.
No, it's-
But probably
No,
each
but
of
most
has
of us-
somebody.
most of us are looking for and I think find a most trusted source.
Yes,
For
we
some
all have
people,
that.
it's Fox News. For some people, it's the New York Times. And you won't find too much overlap in those categories.
I taught some young kids,
except they're owned by the same person.
Yeah.
That's getting to the point.
and one of my observations is, while they're in school, they're very focused on taking tests and getting the SATs passed, et cetera. So they really don't know what's going on in the world. And then you move them forward into the world and you say, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? They don't really have a good opinion. They don't. And if you say, well, research it, they find 5 sources that contradict each other. It's very difficult when you talk about critical thinking, very difficult for them to figure out what's true, what's not true, what's reliable, what's not reliable. Their view of the world is not really that well formed yet, so they don't have anything to lay it against. I think we have a kind of a crisis in that area. So, and we're very influenced by people that have a good intent. This recent thing about TikTok. So now we're going to give it to a bunch of people to own, but we're actually leaving the algorithm with the Chinese.
Uh.
And the algorithm is what pushes various information to the user in a prescribed way.
Yeah.
And it's there to effectively influence people's point of view.
Well, you mentioned the words critical thinking that I think are critical in our
Mike,
education.
I was going to say, can you tell us when we encounter philosophical issues, which we do it in a situation like this. We don't on an everyday basis, but we do sometimes on an everyday basis. But with respect to philosophical problems, Mike, where should we go for some enlightenment?
Well, as long as we use the word enlightenment as opposed to certainty, I would say there are multiple sources of things to think about philosophically in our social world, and YouTube is one of them. Not only YouTube will tell you how to fix a plumbing, but if you go into YouTube and say, I'm interested in justice, you will find dozens of YouTube videos of philosophers teaching about justice. And what you have is great teachers which have been videoed and it's put up on YouTube. It's very thought-provoking. I would say that's one source. Certainly another source is artificial intelligence, which obviously makes mistakes, but when you're thinking about philosophy, what I found in using artificial intelligence is I may have different interpretations of what they write, but mistakes aren't really relevant in that field. It gives you a lot to think about. You can go into ChatGPT or Claude or many of them and say, what are the problems with solipsism? And you will see many of the things that we discuss in this class. So that's another source. There are encyclopedias of philosophy online that are free. Stanford University, if you really want to get down into the rat holes, has got a massive database of philosophy called the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. There is also a competing online, I think it's called the Online Encyclopedia of Philosophy, that I found is a little more of general understanding than the Stanford, which really requires you to know philosophy extremely well. But all of these things, if in terms of following this class, you will find videos on what is reality, and they're thought-provoking. And you'll hear many of the things that we're talking about here. And of course, in an advertisement, Forrest goes back to the source material. You can read Plato. He is not a bad read. Actually, Descartes' not a bad read. We did a class on Bishop Berkeley, we meaning Forrest, that many of you all have attended. I disagree with 95% of what Bishop Berkeley said, not to mention the fact that he was enslaved people, but he's readable. So you can go back to some of the original ideas from philosophers that you can read and make sense. And Forrest, you're going to offer a class on Lucretius next. Am I correct?
On the Stoics, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
This is our Epictetus. Yeah.
Right. So we have classes like this. There are lots of opportunities to think about philosophical problems that are free and available to everybody. You can even write Forrest and I questions.
Mhm.
I mean, it's Tony can attest.
Thank you.
I don't know
I
whether,
Thank you, Richard, for that response.
I don't know if we give, Tony can tell you whether we give good answers or not, but we try.
Ask a philosopher. Yeah.
Yes, ask a
Right.
philosopher.
Yeah, right.
Right. So I would urge all of you to continue to, well, if you haven't mined those resources, do so.
Okay.
Especially AI. I mean, I don't know, AI's future. AI to me is extraordinarily scary.
Yeah.
If you watch the Jon Stewart show, Monday, he interviewed a man who was one of the original developers of AI for Google, and he's an alarmist. And he's an insider as much as one can be an insider, having developed AI programs. And he was just, his hair was on fire over AI. But at least philosophically right now, it's a pretty benign tool to learn things.
I'd
So
like,
I'm very,
I'm sorry.
go ahead. I'm very curious about, as you know, we just have maybe 7 minutes or so left. I'm curious about how this course worked for you. Did it help you in your thinking, or did it not help you very much? And be very open and honest about this, please. It's an honest question.
I mean, you do get the choice of, I would encourage you in the reviews. This course is different from anything that Forrest has offered and is different from anything I've offered. I hate to say it's an experiment, but it is in a way, because we didn't just read Descartes. We talked about a philosophical issue, which not many courses in Chesapeake Forum have done. So is it worth doing again, let's say, on the issue of ethics, or not? With someone who's
Well,
courses.
I would say it's very interesting as an intellectual exercise, but the bottom line is my reality is my reality. And so I can't, my reality may change, but I don't have to know what is reality because I experience reality. It may be a totally wrong, different reality. It may be totally off base. I may be crazy, but it is my reality, and that's how I live my life based on that reality.
just
Tony?
Yes, I wrote to Forrest when I first learned about this class, and after reading Mike's first submission for the first class, I wrote to Forrest that this sounds like something wherein you have matter or truth or reality cannot be created nor destroyed, and everything else is up for philosophical debate. And Forrest responded that it's this part about everything else that he hoped would be discussed during this class. And I like Oren, I agree that that reality might boil down to two facets or two facts or two possibilities, and reality being one, the world that exists without human interaction or perception or recognition. There is a world. For example, the universe existed throughout the evolution of Homo sapiens. And then once Homo sapiens started thinking, you have another reality because they are putting their subjective and objective opinion to the reality that already exists. I'm not a doubter in that. I don't think that reality or the universe or matter did not exist without human recognition or perception. I believe that there is both a reality without human perception and a reality that has human perception, which is being interpreted or perceived by subjective opinion.
You know, I would also say, I mean, you mentioned having a course on ethics, or you might throw into that a course on justice. I see that as sort of a different course because reality, I don't know, to me it's different. Reality is what you experience. Ethics is the way you live your life. And so reality is more fixed for me than what ethics might be or justice might be, you know. So I actually I think it would be very interesting to have a course on those topics.
Okay.
I would change it around for you, Forrest. I would ask the question. I reread the blurb and listened to the little video at the beginning when I was thinking about choosing the course. What did you hope that this course would do?
Well,
What was your goal?
yeah, well, I think what I said at the end of that note that most recently sent out, I think, was I hope that my hope was that when you came across the word reality or real or any of the words that are based on that, my hope was that you would stop to think about what was meant by that person or that writer or speaker or whatever. My hope was that it wouldn't be a word that you would just pass over, that you would kind of ask yourself, what does that person mean by real? That was my hope. A kind of a modest hope. Margot?
I think it's sort of reinforced for me my belief in the importance of the context around people's reality, what they think is reality. I think, we do have sort of differing realities in this country, and people's behavior is completely aligned with what they think their reality is.
I'm quite different.
And that being said, it's not a matter of stupid or smart. It's, if you think your reality is a certain way, you're going to proceed in a certain way.
Anybody else want to say anything?
I would just want to say that I think doing a little bit of reading in texts helps to focus individual thinking and also the discussion that proceeds from it. And if there was anything missing here, it was that. I don't think the thought experiments are really a substitute for reading some Descartes or someone else who has something to say.
I agree with Richard. I had the good fortune to be reading in parallel with this course, Don DeLillo's book, White Noise, which is all about reality.
Right.
It's affected by circumstances, by mass media, by academia, whatever. It's ironic and laughable, but it's also deeply, deeply real. And he deals frequently in several ways in different episodes with the challenge of recovering reality and repositing it, kind of jump-starting it again. And I found that extremely interesting and provocative, and some of the insights that I gained from reading that novel leaked into my thinking about this course, and I'm happy that I had that reference point. And I think it would, all the courses that I've taken from you before, Forrest, I found particularly interesting because they had that point of reference, because they had a coherent philosophy to present, to argue against, to agree with, to critically explore. And here, there was no center. There was no particular going in hypothesis. There were lots of views, but they varied from topic to topic and from session to session. And we didn't have that reference point, and I missed that. I had a little bit of it by virtue of my good fortune, but
Eleanor, you've been quiet, unusually quiet today.
Well, I feel that I'm off your frequency today because, and that's my general feeling about this class, that maybe first let me say that I'm extremely thankful to you and Mike for having this course, for really trying to guide us into a very productive and very interesting discussion, and to the whole group. Thank you very much. And I would appreciate if I have an opportunity to be in another course, whatever topic that will be. Ethics will be really great at this time. But I felt like maybe it's because of the lack of reading. I would agree, and I would appreciate to have more reading for my personal, I don't know, benefit. If you would more than just to guide the discussion. But I felt sometimes like we are two different groups discussing two different subjects, and just starting the course and having the question mark at the end, what is the reality? I thought that we'll be more open to explore that. I don't feel that I get that, because we keep going back to what is like really defined, what is experimentally proven. And that was not what I expected from this course. And I wonder, I keep going back, like if we were the people in front of which Giordano Bruno would stand, we would have burned him. We would have not even given him opportunity, because we go back like with his chair. Many times in this course it was said, people who had delusional thinking, that we put them in a mental institution. Wow. I mean, I thought we will be those delusional people who will question. That's what I expected. I'm sorry. So that's why I'm quiet. I mean, today we talked more about what is social norm, according to me. What is a social contract, whether it is a state, whether it's a law, justice. That's all social contract of a group. It's not a philosophical question about what is reality. So I enjoy listening to you, but I couldn't participate. Thank you.
Okay. And Mike?
well, I was going to ask. I mean, Lucy is another member of the club in terms of taking philosophy courses
yeah.
here.
Excuse me, Mike. I meant to call him Mike Landau first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have two Mike.
Right.
Yeah, my mindset is a little different. I'm looking at one of the things that's happening to us at an incredible pace, which is the artificial intelligence technology, how that's going to morph into general intelligence, super intelligence, all of which is not 100 years away. It's around the corner. And I thought that would have a major impact on how we perceive reality, when in fact, all of a sudden we've created an intelligence in silicon that is substantially more than the one we have. And that's something that's pretty current, actually. That's coming quickly. So I thought that would be part of our discussion of reality, and that was kind of pushed to the side as not really having to do with reality, and I kind of didn't really respond much, but I really did feel that way.
Okay, Mike, Mike Davis, you have a final word?
Well, I was going to say to Mike's point, and there's what's happening in artificial intelligence is deep fakes. I'm sure you all have heard of it. And there are two companies that were just came online and developed, where they can literally take a picture of you, your voice, and your behavior, and mimic you in minutes, and create a picture of you doing something. And that is a challenge to our view of reality. I mean, how do we know it's a deep fake when the rules that we use to determine reality just don't help us? And we really didn't get into that. I think I sort of missed that, but I think the discussion has been great. That's part of what Foster and I always want, is class participation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I've appreciated the class. I'm not sure if I understand what reality is. I think I understand it for myself, but that's probably I can't put it in general terms, but I will say during these 3 weeks, I did appreciate what we did have to read, and I did go further than that a little bit with Descartes and with a couple other things. But I have been aware of how I'm listening to people when they say something that has those words in it, real or reality. I have heard a different thing. I'm not sure what it is, but from people, from classes, from church, from the, whatever, many different sources, the news too. So there's something that has been, illuminated a little bit for me. I think I would have liked to have read more, probably. Not sure if I would have had time to read more, though.
So
So,
that
yeah.
seems to be coming not unanimous, but I'm certainly taking that on board for any future classes, that the reading was too sparse.
Yeah. Well, gee, I appreciate your honesty in your responses, and as I said, we'll take that on board. So thank you all for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Forrest. Thank you, Mike.
both.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
I hope,
Bye-bye.
I hope your own realities steadily improve.
Okay.